Well, welcome to this episode of the Good Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Charles Good. My guest for this episode is Dr. Mary Kelly, who is a retired naval officer and commander, military professor at the Naval Academy and Air Force Academy, and the best-selling author of over 15 books on business and leadership. In this episode, we explore how to overcome procrastination and become more productive. Mary differentiates between laziness and procrastination, explains why we procrastinate, and offers proven practical ways to overcome our procrastination tendencies and become more productive. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to the Good Leadership Podcast, where we engage with esteemed thought leaders and explore research-backed strategies and techniques that empower leaders at every level to achieve meaningful results that drive lasting change. Welcome, Dr. Kelly, to the program first.
Charles, good. I am so excited to be with you today. This is a great topic, and I am thrilled to be with your audience.
Wonderful. And you have a great book, Stop Procrastinating Tomorrow. And you admit that everyone procrastinates. Everyone has that tendency to procrastinate. The difference is that some people learn to overcome their procrastination inclinations, while others let procrastination negatively impact their lives.
That is 100% correct. After I graduated from the Naval Academy, I went on to do about 25 years on active duty in the Navy in various capacities, mostly in Asia. I did logistics and intelligence. And what I learned by watching the really successful people in the military, and I think the military has just some of the best leaders we've ever had, was they didn't overthink super difficult concepts. They got all the information they could as fast as possible, and then they made a decision. And people think, well, I don't want to make a decision, or I don't want to move forward on this because, what if I'm wrong? Or what if? It is so easy to get caught into that pattern of what if. And yeah, you worry about making decisions as a leader because people are going to second guess you. That's going to be true regardless of how much time you take to make that decision. So one of my bosses taught me, he said, look, you're never going to get 100% of the information you'd like to have before you make a decision. So you just have to go with as good as what you got in the moment and know that you're going to probably have to make adjustments, and that's okay.
Absolutely. And so many leaders need to understand that, right? They are never going to be given 100% of the information to make any decision with absolute certainty. You have to operate with the information you have. I know Colin Powell has a good metric that he uses for decision making as well, between that 40 and 70% marker. But it's so important to know that and to just kind of emphasize that. I like what you say about procrastination because it's, as we know, it's a way to avoid tasks. It may be a reaction to being overwhelmed, often caused by what you kind of alluded to is just overthinking.
It is. And right now, we as leaders, we as humans are surrounded by great information. Some's great. A lot of it's good, but there's a lot of garbage information too. And it's so easy to get distracted by all the chaff. Now, chaff in the military, as some of your listeners might know, chaff is a distraction. So think about, here's how I explain chaff, and I'm not sure I have the best explanation of this. Let's say you're in a plane and there's a missile locked on to your plane. I will just share with you the first two words that go through your head, not happy birthday, not happy birthday. And you get this missile locked on and you're saying, okay, now what do I do? You wait till there's a certain amount of range and then you release the chaff. Chaff, think about a huge, big old garbage bag full of sawdust, but it's not sawdust. They're little metal shavings. And you release this big balloon of metal shavings into the air. And then ideally, the missile gets in around all this metal stuff and it goes, oh, this must be the plane. I'll blow up here while you fly away. That's the purpose of chaff. It is a distraction. And right now, our people are just inundated with chaff, with distractions, with things that might be helpful, but probably are just another distraction in their life. So how do we help people distill the nuggets of great information through the chaff and help them get the things done they really want to get done? Because I believe most of our people, we all want to accomplish the things we want to do. If you've ever gone to work and had a to-do list and then you leave at the end of the day and your to-do list is longer than when you started, and we've all had those days, what do? You just feel like a failure. You feel like, oh, I just didn't, look at my list. You're frustrated. And when our people get frustrated, that can sometimes snowball. And you get 3 or 4 days in a row like that, or maybe one of your people has 3 or 4 days in a row like that. And now they're frustrated, they're angry, and now they're working slower because now they've just got more stuff to deal with. They can't seem to prioritize. And that's when people get that sense of overwhelm. And you look at your to-do list and you look at everything you've got to do. And some of your to-do list items are big brain activities where you really need to be focused. And others are what I call drunk monkey work among my friends. It's things that, you can do with a glass of wine in your hand if you want. I call that my drunk monkey work. But you still got to get it done. So how do you balance all the things you have to do with all of the distractions?
And what do you say to people who say that procrastination and laziness, they're really the same thing?
Now, we've all procrastinated, and sometimes we've all done it out of laziness. We have. Sometimes there's stuff you just don't want to do. I'm always amazed that when I was a professor, I taught at both the Air Force Academy, the Naval Academy on the military side, and then I also taught in the grad school of Colorado State University and for Hawaii Pacific University for I've got over 30 years combined university teaching experience. That means grading a lot of papers. And I will share with your listening audience that if you've ever written a paper or taken a test, you need to know that we as the teachers have to go back and look at those things. And I would have these stacks and stacks and stacks of papers, and I would look at them, and it wasn't laziness exactly. I just didn't want to do it. And you've got 3 or 4 classes worth of papers to grade, or 3 or 4 classes worth of tests to grade, and you just go, I don't want to do it. Well, there's only one good solution. You have to sit yourself down and plow through it. So how I did it, what I learned was if I try to do this in my home or in my office, there was always something else to do. I will share with you, my toilets are never cleaner than when I have a pile of papers to grade. My toilets get so clean because I will do almost anything to avoid looking at that paper. So I'm not being lazy. There's just certain things you just go, oh, that's going to take me 8 hours. I don't even want to start. And what we have to tell ourselves is, okay, you don't have to do all 4 classes at once. Just do the one class. Start with that. It's going to take 8 hours, just the one class, but just start with one. And sometimes just going, okay, I'll just grade 2 papers. And you just got to start with those 2 papers, or I'll just start for 15 minutes, or I'll just do this for 5 minutes. You have to help your brain help you because our limbic system, there's a science behind this. And on the website ancillary to the book Stop Procrastinating Tomorrow, and thank you for that, I talk about the science of the limbic system of our brain that's saying, you know what? If you don't do anything at all, that's good. See, you're going to be okay. You're fine right now. See, if you change and actually do something, whoa, that could be dangerous. So maybe instead of grading those papers, you should just lie on the couch and watch TV for a while. See, that's safe. You don't want to hurt yourself doing that. Our brain is trying to protect us. So our brain will give us all the justification we want to not do something. We, the rational part of our brain, has to overcome that. We have to say, all right, we have to start. How do we start? So for some people, it's time. I'll just work on this for 5 minutes, or I'll just work on these 2 papers, or I'll start cleaning the kitchen by just cleaning out this one drawer. We have to break it up into something our brain goes, okay, not scary, not dangerous. We'll just do this. And for different people, it's different elements. Like I said, it's time, it's a quick project, it's one drawer. So, how your brain works, you know best. If you can say, I can do anything for 1 minute, okay, good. Your brain says, we can do anything for 1 minute. So then do it in 1 minute, 5 minute, 10-minute increments. However, your brain likes to break things down, that's what you got to work with because our brains are designed to protect all the rest of us and they will rationalize anything that we don't want to do.
Great insights there. I like the distinction you make between the lazy people usually exert the least amount of energy possible on a task. Procrastinators and why they're different tend to exert a ton of energy on the tasks, but they wait to do it to the last minute because the most common myth I hear from students, from leaders, from even family members is Charles, I work better under pressure. That's where I thrive.
That's only because people work to deadlines. So again, if you're one of those people, we're all one of those people. Set yourself deadlines. And by that, I mean, if you've got to get something done, schedule it. We're doing this podcast today and it was on my calendar. I know it was on your calendar. And that means we both showed up and we're both getting it done because that's what we do. We show up if something is on the calendar. So schedule things, give yourself deadlines. People work to deadlines. One of the worst things you can tell your children is just clean your room someday. It's never going to happen. Someday is never going to happen. Or tell your employees, just get that done when you're able to. That is a terrible thing because what it's telling them is it's not very important and you kind of really don't have to do it. But if you say that needs to be done on Friday because if it's not done by Friday at noon, none of us get our Christmas bonus. Oh, it'll be done by Friday at noon. And if everybody else knows that the Christmas bonus is reliant upon that one person getting it done Friday at noon, they'll all be stopping by. Hey, Charles, how you doing? You getting that thing done? Is there anything I can do to help? We'll help you get this done. Let's all get this done. Let's all get this done together. Let's work together as a team. Get this done because they have a stake in it too. People naturally work to deadlines, so you got to give them some.
An argument could be made that procrastination and surges in productivity indicate that you leave a lot of genius on the table untapped. The output and the energy, if it wasn't just limited to that small amount of time and space right up against the deadline, you could be spending a whole lot more energy and time and putting out a better product.
Absolutely. And for some people, there are people who need people. I have a friend and she's amazing, she's brilliant, she's smart, but she can't work by herself. So over COVID, she was a disaster because she needs another person looking at her saying, "All right, what are we going to accomplish in the next 3 hours?" They map it out, they talk it through. She has to talk to think it through, and then she can get to it. And then in 3 hours, she's got the results. But by herself during COVID, she could not get it done. We try to call and help. "Oh, do you want us to check on you on the phone?" No, without somebody sitting there, that was her accountability, helping her do this, she was not effective. And she's not a bad person. It's just how she best works. So we all have to figure out how we best work, what gives us that creativity, that energy, that brilliance. And then we have to tap into each other. And as leaders, we have to know our people well enough to know this is what motivates this person. This is how this person best works. This is what's going to be best for this person. And how do we help them achieve that brilliance? Because different people's accountability is different. Some people say, leave me alone and I just need 2 weeks by myself and I'll get it to you. Other people need checks every morning, every afternoon. I once worked for a boss who desperately needed me to come in every single morning at 6 a.m. and say, "Okay, boss, what do you have going today?" And he'd have to think about it. He'd tell me, and then I'd say, "Okay, sounds like we all have a plan. I got it. You got it." And then I'd had to check in with him at the end of the day to make sure he did it. So I worked for this man, but he used me as his accountability every single day to get things done. And some of your people might need this hourly. Some people might need it more often, just touch points. Is there anything getting in your way? How can I help you? And this is our job as leaders. Everybody's different. Everybody has a slightly different take on this, and we just have to figure this out.
And all procrastination is not bad, since procrastination can help you identify really what's important to you. And since most people take action on the things that they value the most, putting something off may reveal that you simply don't care about it as much as what you thought.
Yes, decide, delegate, disappear. We've heard that one. But sometimes in the disappearing, when you're trying to get a lot of things done, if you're looking through your emails, you can do it, delete it, delay it. And sometimes if you delay things, they will resolve themselves. Sometimes that works for you. Sometimes if there's conflict between a few people and they're just letting you know, they might come back a day later and say, "Okay, we figured it out." Okay, good. Then you didn't need to get involved. That sometimes that delaying helps. Or scheduling it. And if you schedule it to address it at another time, that works too. But sometimes procrastination can work in your favor. I have gotten burned because I tend to rush into things quickly. That means I'm an early adapter of technology. Well, sometimes the technology is not ready for that. Or sometimes I'm expecting more of the technology that's there. So I get into it early, I get very excited about it. And then when it doesn't work as advertised or there's bugs and they're still trying to work things out, now my patience level is done. And now I'm like, okay, I tried it, I'm done. And then you come back to me a year and go, "We really want to try this technology." I'm like, "Nope, tried it, not going to do it." If I'd waited, I might be a little bit more of a fan. So sometimes it works in our favor. And that's always one of the questions I ask people is, when has procrastination worked in your favor? And then they go, "Oh, wait, a few times it has." But then you have to ask the other question, and that is, when have you been burned by your own procrastination. And then they're like, oh, yeah, that was actually worse. So sometimes, sometimes it can go either way. More people, though, procrastinate on things that they don't want to do, don't like doing, or don't feel comfortable doing than not.
And there's different types of procrastinators. You give a distinction, which I think I fall into this category, more of the active procrastinators, where they're busy doing things while they're procrastinating on other things.
Yes, my active procrastinators. And I think I'm probably one of those. Like I said, my toilets are never cleaner than when I have piles and piles of paperwork to do. And the reason for that is we sometimes will gravitate toward doing easy things because our brain, again, tries to protect us. So if you've ever gone through your email, a lot of us go through it instead of starting at the top and just working through the emails. We go and search for the things we can delete or take care of right away because it's like quick check things off the list. So we go from 50 emails down to 25 really fast and we feel good about ourselves. But then we look at those other 25s and each of them maybe is gonna take an hour. We're like, "Oh, maybe I should go to the gym. Maybe I should do something else." We'll find something else to do because we don't wanna attack what's hard.
Absolutely. And it doesn't make sense to really learn the tips and the tricks for a more proactive mindset and lifestyle if you don't consider what's driving these deep seated reasons for procrastination. So I'd love to go through some of those just to give our listeners some understanding of maybe what bucket or category they fall into. And let's start perhaps with the most common one, and that's fear.
Fear of success, fear of failure, fear of not knowing how to do it. For example, let's say you work in an accounting firm and they're gonna implement a new software system. And you're thinking, I wonder if they figured out I haven't learned the old software system yet. Because you're scared of losing your job. You're scared of not being able to master the new system. You're scared of not being good at it. And as adults, we don't like to figure things out. I have a phone right here, and I'm here to tell you I don't know how to do 95% of the things that phone is capable of doing. And I have been known to ask random strangers' children questions like, do you have any idea how I do this on my phone? And they will tell me. But as an adult, I don't like to feel frustrated. I don't like to feel I don't know how to do something, and I don't want to fail. And I don't want to fail in front of my peers. So sometimes people oppose change that should be good for them, some kind of advancement when it's not that they oppose the change, they just don't want to let you down as the boss. They don't want to let down their peers, they don't want to let down their clients, and there may be a fear element driving them that we maybe need to address. Hey, we want to make sure you're really comfortable with learning this new software system, and maybe the last software system wasn't something you got excited about, but we're really hoping this one is the way to do it. And then if you're a leader as well, you got to make sure that you get them over the change fear delay mindset as well. Because they say, well, sometimes you'll have somebody say something like, we're going to implement this on the 1st of December. Okay, let's say it's summertime and that's months and months away. You're telling me I don't have to think about it and I don't have to prep for it until the day before the 1st of December. But if you constantly harp on it over and over and over, people get not just fearful, but fatigued by you talking about the change when in fact you should just rip off that band-aid, make the change, and get people immersed in it as quickly as possible. And keep in mind, you can tell people something 100 times. It doesn't mean they're going to get it the first 99 and a half, 99, 0.5 times. We have to repeat things. We have to say things over and over. And people oftentimes say, well, my people should know this. Well, hang on. Your skill set is not the same as theirs. And sometimes we project our abilities onto other people. We'll say, well, if you're an accountant, you should know this. Well, hang on. You maybe figured this out really quickly, but that's not everybody. So there's an element of fear of failure along with a fear of success. What if, and some very successful people experience imposter syndrome, which is silly because if you experience imposter syndrome, then you can't actually be the imposter. The imposters do not experience imposter syndrome. We sometimes are so surprised by our own success that it can cause us to take a step back and not take another step forward. So we just have to be mindful of all kinds of elements that surround the fear behind taking that next step.
So attack the fear head on, get some help if you need it, admit the challenge, and hopefully you can move on and overcome that fear. How about with the second most common one, I think, is overturning overwhelm based procrastination?
Many of my executives experience this. There's so many things that they want to do, so many things they think they should be doing, so many meetings to be part of, so many things to read, so much stuff. There's always something else my executives could be doing to make themselves stronger in the position, help their people be better leaders. And they want to do all of it. And there just isn't time to do every single thing we want to do. So we do have to triage our time. And that means carving it out, focusing on what's the most important thing. For example, for my entrepreneurs, they say, I just don't know, I don't even know how to start. And many people start the day, frankly, poorly. They start the day wasting time. They go through their emails. They start by looking at their emails. They start answering their emails, but they don't attack the most important emails first. They attack what's easy first. So I tell my entrepreneurs and my sales team specifically, you have to triage it quickly and figure out what's going to make me money today. What is the best thing right now to increase my revenue? It's not going on social media and making comments on other people's posts. That's not going to probably make you money today. That's a nice to do. Again, it falls into the drunk monkey category later if you've got extra time. Is it nice to do? Sure. Can you delegate it? You bet. So with my execs, we start by talking through every single thing they absolutely have to do, the must have to do's, and then the like to do's. What would you like to do? The should do's, you should kind of do this. And then the things that if you didn't do them, if you delayed it or you delegated them, you might free up some time. We put them into those buckets. And then we say, all right, let's attack the most important things, the things only you can do. Only you can do this. What is the most pressing thing right now? And then let's attack that. And we triage and prioritize ruthlessly. And then on the delegation, many people say, well, nobody's going to do it as well as me. Oh, I hear that so often. That could be true. But you know what? That doesn't mean that they're good enough is bad. And sometimes you delegating to somebody else has a benefit to them. You're teaching them a different skill set. You're helping them develop skills. You're showing trust and faith in their abilities, but you're also getting things off your plate. And it may come back and it may not be the way you were going to do it. It might be better. It might be a little bit worse, but if it's good enough and it gets the job done enough, then you know what? Sometimes good enough is okay. Now, that's not like if you're doing brain surgery. Good enough is not okay in brain surgery. That would be a really good thing that only you could do. But for other things, what can you delegate? What can you take off your plate? What can you say to your team? Hey, I'm overwhelmed right now and I need help with these things, and see what the team says. And if you work for yourself or you are an entrepreneur, what can you outsource? What can you find other people to do? I'm talking short bursts of jobs that will just free up 4 or 5 to 10 hours of your time every single week. What can you give to somebody else that's going to be fine so that you can free up the things that only you can do? But that's how we try to figure that out. We put those in those buckets and then we say, all right, now let's attack the buckets.
The third most common area I think of the root cause of procrastination is anxiety-induced procrastination. When someone gives you anxiety, you naturally want to avoid it, but the root cause for the anxiety may be only a small portion of the task that you need to do. So breaking things down can help reduce that anxiety and accomplish whatever's necessary.
So I have some friends who are wonderful people. They're very talented, they're creative, and they work in marketing. And so here's what happens. They will get a client and they get very excited about the project, especially when they're meeting the client. And they know they can do this great thing. And then they think about it. And then they get anxiety about it. And then they worry about it. And then they think that they're not going to be able to do as good a job as they thought they were going to be able to do, or they don't want to let down the client. And now the deadline is approaching. They miss the deadline because they've overthought this. Now they've got anxiety and guilt and doubt and all kinds of negative emotions. They don't want to call the client and say, look, I just overthought things in my head and I'll have it done in 3 days. Now they're shamed, they're upset, they're frustrated with themselves. Now they're not sleeping. Now they're less productive. Oh, it starts like a tornado, in a big circle, and then it just starts to wind and wind and wind like a tornado until it's this nice tight circle of just anxiety, and then they can't get out of it. And that's a really tough place to be.
Agreed. So we've talked about the root causes, some strategies to avoid those. Let's move in our final segment here is talking about those quick tips that you can stop procrastinating now, because all leaders need this to say, okay, that's great. I'm going to tackle that root cause. I'm going to try to get better at these things. But what's going to help me tomorrow, Mary, to be more productive and procrastinate less? And we've given some great tips already. Break it down into smaller steps, create a to-do list, set deadlines, minimize distractions. But are there some other tools that you can provide our listeners that would help them in this manner as well?
I have 3 quick ones. So first, at the beginning of every month, I set my 5 top goals for the month. What do I really want to accomplish this month? Top 5 goals. This is in the 12-month business success and accountability planner that your folks are all going to get. And it's on the website. It's on the productiveleaders.com website. It's totally free. There's no weird sign in. And it's a 12-month planner, and it helps people identify their top 5 goals for the month. And then when you get a minute every single morning, you look at those top 5 goals and say, all right, what am I doing today that is contributing to those top 5 goals? And then if you've got a team, you also share your top 5 goals with the rest of the team. Wouldn't it be great if we as employees knew what our boss's top 5 goals were for the month? That would be amazing. And then we could align our thoughts, our behaviors, our actions to support those goals too. And yet, most people never communicate those goals. So that's one. Number 2 is look very carefully at your watch all day long. Be very mindful of time and be constantly thinking about what can I accomplish in the next 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever time you have, so that I'm not wasting time. People waste copious amounts of time. Every second is precious. I'm fond of saying our life is a finite number of unknown minutes. So we have to use them wisely, and we have to use them in the best ways for us. And so when you've got 3 minutes, 5 minutes, I always have a list of things I can do with me so that I can get something done quickly. What most people do now is they will go surf something on their phone, they will entertain themselves, or number 3, they will think that the time is theirs to waste, and this to me is the worst. I see people on planes all the time, and what are they doing? They're reading, they're sleeping, they're watching movies, they're watching TV. I'm like, "People, you could be getting so much done. Why aren't you writing? Why aren't you creating? Why aren't you drafting something? Why aren't you thinking big thoughts, mapping things out, doing a strategy plan?" It's amazing to me how much time people waste. And once you start valuing every single second, and that's mindset shift that we kind of have to make. And for me, like I said, that happened at the Naval Academy. Once we figure out that every single second is precious and we don't have them to waste, it changes how we view time. And then we're a little bit more careful with how we spend it.
Great tips. Two other ones that I wanted just to kind of point out from your book that I love that are common sense, but maybe not common practice is learn to say no. Avoid overcommitting yourself. I see this so often with leaders. They can't say no. And they realize that, or they don't realize the fact that if you can't say no, you're really saying no to a lot more than you're saying yes to as a result. And the other thing that you mentioned too is the 2-minute rule. If you can complete the task in 2 minutes or less, do it. Don't put it off.
Absolutely. So the great thing about the 2-minute rule, and that's the easier one, is you cross things off your list. You're like, I can get that done in 2 minutes. I'm going to make that call. I'm going to get this done. And it gives you a sense of accomplishment, which gives your brain that happy little chemical charge of serotonin or dopamine and all the good stuff. So that's really nice. And if you're feeling just sluggish and you're looking at your list, it's kind of nice to cross 2 or 3 things off in 6 minutes so that you're going, okay, I'm on a roll. I can get this done. It gives you a little confidence as well. So the 2-minute rule is great fun. But the other part is the just say no. Just say no. Remember Nancy Reagan? Just say no. Part of that is say yes to the things that matter. If it's not a heck yes, it's probably a heck no. And you can change that any way you like. And if you're not excited about it and you're not enthused about it and it is not serving your goals, serving your company, serving your clients, serving your family, serving your community, it may not be the right thing at that time. And it is okay to say, you know what, right now, my bandwidth does not allow me to say yes to that, but I really appreciate you thinking of me. Boom. And then move on to the things that are most important now.
Great advice. I have several leaders that say the same thing. If it's not an immediate yes, then they know it's a no. It's not a maybe later. It's just, if I'm not enthused right now about it, then I'm just going to say no to it because it's probably for the better long term. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Dr. Kelly, on this episode of the Good Leadership Podcast. Remind our listeners how they can get in contact with you and learn more about your work.
Thanks so much. It's productiveleaders.com because, who wants an unproductive leader? Productiveleaders.com. And if you do /free after that, it's going to take you to a whole vault of free materials that are designed to help leaders be more productive and happier. So that's my hope as we move forward with our leadership journeys.
I hope this episode has provided you with valuable insights. If it has, I ask you to share it with someone who would also benefit from it. If you've been enjoying and gaining knowledge from this podcast, then subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find all the previous episodes of the podcast and additional learning resources. You can also subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify and leave up to a 5-star review.